This teddy bear is an expert at flirting with girls. He even invited 4 girls to his house: Angelique, Heavenly, Charine, and Sauvignon Blanc. They played a game of truth or dare, and then Charine pooped in the living room. When Lori came back, she was furious. Outside, the teddy bear's cute and cuddly appearance attracted many beautiful women to take pictures with it. The moment someone pressed the shutter, it struck a unique pose. Surprisingly, the beautiful women were not angry. On the contrary, they were just amused by it. The teddy bear became the biggest internet sensation in America. But then something unexpected happened. John had been a loner since he was a child. No other children would play with him. One Christmas, his parents gave him a teddy bear. He loved it and named it Ted. John made a wish on a shooting star. He wished for Ted to have the ability to talk. When he woke up the next day, John was shocked. Ted was really alive. He rushed to tell his parents, but when they saw the bear, they yelled and screamed in response. This talking teddy bear made headlines and became a household name. Luckily, Ted wasn't blinded by money. He stayed by John's side through school, graduation, work, and love. Ted was there at every important point in John's life. 27 years passed. John had changed from a cute boy into a greasy middle-aged man. Ted's popularity had long faded, and the two of them lived a life of decadence. John woke up every day and drank 2 bottles of vodka, and then he and Ted would blow smoke together. The two of them also talked about the secrets of getting girls. They got so high that John forgot to go to work, and because he was afraid to drink and drive, he let Ted drive. Ted was not tall enough to reach the steering wheel, and his legs were too short to reach the brakes. With a piece of wood under his feet, they somehow made it to their destination despite all the challenges. This was the 384th time John had been late. The boss couldn't take it anymore. John was fired. However, John didn't mind losing his job. Having fun with Ted was the most important thing to him. Of course, there was one more thing that mattered, and that was his girlfriend. Sadly, his girlfriend and Ted were like water and fire, totally incompatible. John and his girlfriend, Lori, were about to make out. Suddenly, Ted came bursting in. He got under the covers, got in between them, and he and John started singing together. He rudely interrupted the couple's intimate moment. Lori was very upset with Ted. Teddy had a date with 4 beautiful women and ended up making a mess of the house, making Lori even angrier. Ted even pooped in the living room. When Lori found out that John had lost his job, she gave him an ultimatum. It's either me or him. Are you really going to choose a teddy bear over your girlfriend? John, of course, chose his girlfriend. John had a heart-to-heart with Ted and asked him to move out for a while. He got Ted a job as a supermarket cashier. Not to mention, Ted looked pretty good in a suit. Ted didn't blame John for making that choice, but he was still a little sad. Ted worked at the supermarket with a distracted mind, until one day, when he turned and saw Tammy Lynn. Have you ever seen a teddy bear flirt with a girl? Step 1. Ted first said hello to the beautiful Tammy Lynn. She smiled back. Excellent. Step 2. Ted blew her a wave of big, fat, lovey-dovey kisses. She responded in kind. Very good. And the last big step, Ted was going to show her what he was made of. Teddy did a sultry dance. Tammy Lynn was so amused that she was in a state of shock. And as expected, Ted had conquered her by the end of the night. Today was the 3rd day that Ted had been separated from John. For the past 20 years, they had been inseparable. They had never been apart. Now they couldn't even see each other, but it couldn't be helped. As long as they were together, all they would do was drink, smoke, and mess around. For the sake of John's happiness, Ted chose not to disturb him. All this continued until one day, Ted went to a party. Ted met his idol, so he immediately called John. John was at an important company gathering with Lori. Ted told him that their idol, Flash Gordon, was at the party. John's heart was racing with excitement, but after looking downstairs at Lori, he realized that if she found out that he was hanging out with Ted again, she'd break up with him. After much hesitation, John came up with an idea. He would sneak out for half an hour to meet Flash Gordon and come back. John was sure Lori wouldn't find out. John arrived at the party and saw Flash Gordon walking through the crowd. At that moment, it was as if they were the only 2 people left in the world. All the happy memories of John's childhood came flooding back, so much so that he lost track of time. It wasn't until he saw the clock and knew Lori's company gathering was over that John was brought back from his childhood. He knew something was wrong, and sure enough, when he saw Lori, she said she was done. She didn't listen to any of John's explanations. She left without looking back. Ted pissed off John's girlfriend and she left. Although Ted tried to comfort John, John still took his anger out on Ted. He said a lot of hurtful things and blamed Ted for all his failures. He said he would never see Ted again. Ted rushed after him and pushed the button on his chest like John did when he was a kid.
I love you!
This "I love you" echoed in the air, but John never turned back. The next day, Lori came out of the shower and heard the doorbell. She opened the door but there was no one there. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from the floor. Ted came to apologize to Lori. He didn't want to ruin the relationship between his best buddy and his girlfriend. Now John was downstairs in the restaurant, as long as Lori went down to see him. Ted promised not to disturb their life again. Lori agreed. She got dressed and went out. Ted sat forlornly on the couch as he caressed the picture of himself and John. This was supposed to be the last time they saw each other. Ted was lost in his memories. Then, he was interrupted by the doorbell. When he opened the door, he saw a father and son he'd never seen before. They were staring straight at Ted. Ted was in trouble. The bad guys pulled out a sack and took Ted with them. Ted came out of the sack and the first thing he saw was a wall full of pictures of himself. Ted was the only talking teddy bear in the whole world. No one could buy another. The chubby son, named Robert, really wanted Ted, so they had to steal him. The mustached father, named Donnie, took Ted to Robert's room. He told them to have fun and closed the door. Robert got up from the bed and soon, Ted was enveloped in his shadow. He didn't hug Ted gently. He grabbed Ted by the ears. Again and again, he grabbed Ted's ear and threw him out. Ted was now covered in wounds and looking for a chance to escape. He pretended to please Robert and offered to play hide and seek with him. When Robert's eyes were closed, he slipped out of the room. Ted was very smart. He temporarily repaired his ear with a stapler and then he dialed John's number from the landline to ask for help. But before he could give the address, Donnie found him. Ted threw the phone and hit him right in the face. He ran away but ran into the basement by mistake. Hundreds of broken teddy bear toys were stored there. Ted kept retreating but the father-son duo were already standing in the basement doorway. They threw him into the car again. John called the police to report that his teddy bear had been kidnapped. The cop on the other end just hung up the phone. Which kid is messing around this time? Then, John remembered that when he was in the park, a father and son wanted to buy Ted at a high price, but John refused. They must be the kidnappers. The men left him a business card, which should have an address on it. When Lori saw the address, she hit the gas and sped off. She bumped into the strange father-son duo, who were just about to leave in their car. She chased after them. Teddy was lying on the thick glass, keeping an eye on the distance between the two cars. He broke the back window with a baseball bat and jumped into John and Lori's car. But before he could even feel happy, Donnie braked sharply. The two cars collided and Ted was thrown back into Donnie's car again. Ted had been kidnapped. After watching John's car get thrown off the road, Ted grabbed a sack from the trunk and put it over Donnie's head. Donnie tried to pull the sack off several times but he couldn't. The car crashed into a curb. Ted took the opportunity to get out of the car. His body was cut by the glass but he didn't care. He fled all the way to the stadium. Donnie was in hot pursuit but his fat son, Robert, couldn't get through because of his size. John knocked him out with a punch. Ted was cornered. The only way out behind him was the lighting tower but Ted had short arms and legs. He couldn't climb fast enough. Donnie behind him pulled his left leg. He almost fell several times. Ted held onto the pole above him, trying desperately to break free. Since Donnie couldn't have Ted, he decided that no one could. Donnie decided to destroy Ted. With a strong tug, he threw Ted out. Ted's body broke into two pieces and his lint flew away in the air. When John and Lori arrived, they saw Ted's body split in half. Ted had been torn in half by Donnie. John and Lori were desperately trying to pick up the pieces on the ground, but Ted had begun saying his final goodbyes. "John, you need to take care of Lori. She's a good girl, and she'll be with you for the rest of your life." And with that, Ted lost his glow. He just laid there on the ground, not moving. John was falling apart. John rushed home. He scrambled to sew Ted back together, but what was the point? There was no more talking teddy bear. Ted was dead. Ted, who had been with John for most of his life, was now in such a state of disrepair. Lori didn't know what to say. If she hadn't forced John to make a choice, Ted wouldn't be in this situation today. At night, Lori tossed and turned. While standing in front of the window, she saw a shooting star in the sky. She put her hands together and made a wish. "I want to go back to my old life and bring back that naughty bear." She hoped the shooting star would help make it happen. The next day, the first thing Lori did when she woke up was to lift the blanket from Ted's body. The two of them looked at Ted, who was still motionless, and hung their heads. He really won't come back. A miracle happened. The dead teddy bear blinked his eyes and stood up. He came back to life. John's eyes lit up. It was just that Ted's mouth had gone crooked and his eyes were slanted. He said, "It's your fault for putting the cotton in the wrong place. That's why I'm like this right now. But you'll always take care of me, right?" John looked at Ted worriedly. The next moment, Ted was back to normal. "I'm just kidding, man." John and Ted hugged each other tightly. Lori took Ted in with all her heart. In Ted's presence, John and Lori got married. The three of them lived happily ever after. That's the end of the movie. This movie is called Ted. Our question for this issue: do you have a teddy bear toy or a picture of one? Comment 111 if you do. If not, comment 222. This is a good movie. We recommend you guys go watch the original. Well, that's it for this issue. Remember to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.